Whether you're newer to watches or an experienced collector, there are brands and watches that have developed reputation for being simply out of reach. But in certain instances, even some of the most established luxury players have an off the beaten path offering that are a lot more attainable than you might think. So in this video, I will share some outliers in value from brands commonly associated with serious price points that could be found for prices a little bit less than what you might realize. So before we jump into this video, if you want a good jumping off point for all luxury watches, I would recommend our Luxury Watch Brands blog. It's a comprehensive guide to basically a jumping off point to the world of luxury watches. We talk about some different key models, the history of the brand. There's over 50 brands included on this list, by the way, so a lot to get lost in. And then also include some fun facts about each brand that you might not be familiar with. Like, did you know that the Wright brothers were big fans of Vacheron Constantin and owned several of their pieces? If you want to get lost in that, I'd recommend checking it out in the link in the description down below. We'll have that for you. And then also want to give a big shout to a new watch available on TeddyBaldassarre.com, the Chemende Terral collection from Tissot. This is a model family that is not anything necessarily new in terms of the name, but it is getting a total new refresh with 39mm cases and a refresh dial. Since these have been released, these have been very well received. I'm a big fan of them. If you look at the dials, they are just very, very eye-catching, simple, minimal, but do the job if you're just looking for a solid, well-constructed Swiss-made timepiece at an attainable perspective. And also one of my favorite characteristics about these watches are going to be the hands. They have these lance-style hands, but they have the center facet on them, polished on one side, blasted on the other. This is an attribute that you'll sometimes see in high horology brands, say something like the Vacheron Traditionnel. Not to say that this is on the same level, but it is kind of a similar style and approach, and this just from a finishing perspective is very well done. Definitely check them out. They'll be on TeddyBaldassarre.com. We'll put them in the link in the description down below if you are interested as well. So now for our first brand on the list here today, we have Tudor. And Tudor, of course, in recent developments has become very well known for models like the Black Bay, their Pelagos, and their military-inspired dive watches from the 1970s and Big Crown Submariner models from years prior even from that. This is a brand that has risen the ranks very quickly and now have many of their watches sitting in that, say, $3,000 to $4,000 price range generally. But you can actually get one of their watches new just around $2,000, and that is the Tudor 1926. Now, a few years ago, nobody was talking about the Tudor 1926, and I remember seeing it within their collection, specifically one model, the opaline dial version with the blue numerals, and I just thought, if you're looking to get into the brand for the first time and get something very clean, kind of just do it all watch, and to get into a brand like Tudor, which of course has a lot of cachet in the industry, there's a lot to like here. So just over $2,000, you're getting a watch with 100 meters of water resistance, well-finished case, well-finished bracelet, relatively thin, a wide variety of dial colors to choose from, and case sizes. And again, getting into the Tudor Rolex umbrella of brands just at $2,000 for a new product. That is simply phenomenal, and I don't think enough people have recognized that this is available to them. This is also coming in with a price that's about $1,000 cheaper than some of those Black Bay 36 models. This is before Watches and Wonders, so we'll see what Tudor has in store for us, but a phenomenal valued package if you are trying to get into the Tudor brand. For our next watch here, we have Cartier with the Cartier Tank Must SolarBeat. So the Tank has been around since 1918. It's one of the first rectangular watches. It's an icon in terms of its design style, been worn by popular individuals in pop culture, political figures. It is, simply put, one of the most storied watches of all time. Now the SolarBeat, to put a solar movement inside a Cartier tank, some might be saying this is ridiculous. How could you do such a thing? But if you are talking about getting good value for money, at least for getting into a Cartier for good value, this is probably as entry level as you're going to get. You're talking about in that $2,000 to $3,000 range to get into a Cartier tank, and still getting a lot of upside in the process. Now they have a couple sizes for this watch, but both of them are pretty small. They have a small and then a large, but the large is more like a medium. So just have the right expectation when you go into maybe trying one of these watches out. You have 16 years for the servicing interval for these movements. And the interesting thing also about these watches is you look at this and you're like, hey, how does this thing power up? You need access to the solar cells. Now what they did was they actually took the Roman numerals and allowed that to be the way in which light could enter the dial and get to access to that solar cell to create that energy. Pretty cool way of going around this while maintaining that refined and elegant look that has been synonymous with the tank since its inception. Now for our next watch here, we have Grand Seiko. And Grand Seiko, they have a few different options here that you can mention. If you're talking about just mechanical options, you can look at the SBGW collection. You're talking about just over $4,000 to get a mechanical watch from Grand Seiko. But I'm actually not gonna be looking at that. I'm gonna be looking at a quartz option, and there's a lot to like here as well. This is the SBGP 013, and this whole collection offers a lot for the price range because you're talking about a watch that's $2,600, case size of 40 millimeters, 100 meters of water resistance, everyday viability, wears pretty true to that case size with 47 millimeters with that lug to lug, and you're also getting their high accuracy quartz caliber on the inside, the 9F85. So a couple of points to make about these watches. For one, you are getting a case that is still getting that Zaratsu polishing. It's pretty much not cutting any corners there. These are also quartz movements that are not going through the traditional automatic assembly process. These are quartz movements that are assembled by hand. Each one of these movements comes with 100+ components. It's completely in-house made, including the quartz crystals. Yes, the quartz crystals. So when you talk about vertical integrated watchmaking and manufacturing, this is what you're talking about. Even when you're talking about a quartz watch, this is not just your ordinary quartz timepiece. In terms of accuracy as well, high frequency, plus or minus 10 seconds per year. Now I want to include this watch on this list because this was a watch when I got into watchmaking that was around this price. And even years later, it's still around the same price and delivering pretty solid value, all things considered, because pretty much everything else around it has just skyrocketed in price, but this watch has pretty much remained the same. And that is the NOMOS Club, specifically the Club Campus here. Now these watches come with a couple different case sizes, but if you're talking about the entry-level form, you go for one of those smaller case options, something like the 36 with a stainless steel case back. $1,500 for a in-house movement, German-made watch, remarkably thin, 7.9 millimeters, while still obtaining 100 meters of water resistance. This is phenomenal value. I know some people struggle with spending more than say $4,000 or $5,000 on a NOMOS. I get it. I still think the value is there if you look at some of their movements and what they're creating, proprietary escapements. This is their entry level and they're pretty much their entry door into in-house manufacturing. So what they did was they had the Pazoo 7001 housed within some of their entry level models. They no longer had access to those movements because those are owned by ETA. And ETA is notorious for cutting off certain independent brands once they get to a certain size in the industry, or at least it becomes more difficult as they continue to scale. So this is how the brand was able to navigate that concept with their Alpha manual caliber. It's well finished. You can get it with a sapphire exhibition case back, but that does add significantly to the price. So if you are just trying to get into this world of NOMOS, a German-made in-house movement on the inside, this is where you can get a ton of value from the brand. So Omega has ascended quite a bit in terms of their quality standard and what they've been delivering with some of their designs in recent years. And I think they've benefited from what is going on with the circus of other brands surrounding them in the same luxury landscape. But here we're looking at a watch from Omega that is just over $3,000 new. And some of you might be saying, okay, probably has a quartz movement. But no, it actually comes with a mechanical movement on the inside. This is the Omega de Ville Prestige model. So really the catch here and how they're able to charge only $3,300 for these watches is the movement on the inside. Not necessarily a bad movement, but not going to be to the 8000 series caliber standard that we'll see with some of their METAS certifications. Here we have the Omega 2500 caliber. This is basically taking the coaxial escapement that they acquired from Dr. George Daniels, applying it to the 2892. The watch comes with short lugs. It is still chronometer certified, does not come with that master or METAS certification. 39.5 millimeter case, 44 millimeter lug to lug, and very clean looks to add some versatility in the process, and a price just over $3,000. Now for our next watch here, we have the JLC Reverso Classic Monoface Quartz. So some people might be questioning going for a quartz watch, JLC, is this really great value? You are talking about a $4,500 watch, which still is a lot of money, but to get into a brand like JLC for under $5,000 is fantastic. Now, recently I had the opportunity to go visit JLC, and if you've not seen my video actually going through the tour of their manufacturer, I would highly recommend it because I think that is going to give further reason to why I think this is actually still a pretty remarkable deal. Now, you're talking about a watch and a case under, say, $10,000, really almost one of the most complex cases in all of watchmaking to make. The Reverso case alone has 50 components on the inside, so just to make that case is complicated. Then the finishing of the actual case case, the polishing, the dial finishing. I think all in all, it still delivers a very nice package. And you could also get some fantastic reverses from the mechanical side for, of course, more, but still some pretty decent value, all things considered. Comparing the finishing here to something like the tank, it's night and day in terms of what you're getting for the dollar amount. When you consider the high horology tier of Swiss watchmaking, known as the Swiss Holy Trinity, you have AP, Patek Philippe, and Vacheron Constantin. But what if I told you you could get a Vacheron Constantin watch for under $13,000? Some of you might be surprised, others maybe not, but how that is possible is with the Vacheron Constantin Fiftysix collection. Pretty much a traditional three-hand model from the brand that takes design from a reference 6073 from, you guessed it, the year 1956. Now, 2018, they released this model family, and some of the higher end collectors of the brand were a little bit against the release of this watch, and I can understand. This does make Vacheron a bit more attainable, but in terms of the product, I think it still is well positioned, and considering that you can get this watch for just over $10,000, or Vacheron watch under the price of a Daytona at retail pricing, is pretty crazy. How they're able to do this is really from the movement. So the movement here is produced by Val Fleurier. This is the movement manufacturing arm of Richemont, and then is going to also be finished by VC. Still, in terms of the fit and finish, it's not gonna be to the level of the 4400 calibers, but still very well done. A specific caliber here is the VC 1326. And for our last watch on this list, we have an independent brand known as Moser with their Pioneer Central Seconds. So Moser is an independent brand that has a modern twist on classical watchmaking. The name actually dates back to 1828, but for all intents and purposes, was really relaunched in 2005 after many dormant years. And now is owned by the Milan family, who have been in the watchmaking industry for many years as well. And when it comes to the Pioneer, it's a great middle ground, a sports-oriented collection with nice water resistance and a minimal design format. What I really think is compelling about this is you look at Moser, what they're delivering for the money in terms of their fit and finish, very well done. $12,500 starting price for some of these watches. Now, I don't know what the production levels are for these watches, with whether or not they're moving away. At the time of recording this video, they have some different variations of these Central Second models within the Pioneer family, but all of them are under $15,000, which I still think is a good deal considering what you're getting. Smaller batch production, basically for the retail price of a Daytona, 120 meters of water resistance, and a movement that absolutely looks the part. And Moser have really specialized in producing a lot of these smaller specialized parts within watchmaking, specifically hairsprings. So they are in many ways a true manufacturer in what they're developing. But all right, guys, that is my video looking at some luxury watch brands that might be more in reach than you think. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, hit the bell icon, really would appreciate that, and that does help out the channel. Also, definitely check out TeddyBaldassarre.com, full authorized dealer of 30 brands, quick and fast fulfillment, dedicated customer support, and a full factory warranty for all the products that we offer. But guys, thank you again so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.